Elliot Gray, a brilliant but solitary intellectual in his early 30s, found himself standing in an obscure library tucked away in a corner of the city. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and dust, the silence profound, as if the building itself was keeping its secrets. Amid the dim light filtering through the tall narrow windows, he stumbled upon a peculiar book that caught his eye. It was an ancient manuscript, bound in weathered leather, its pages yellowed with age and filled with strange symbols that seemed to shift under his gaze. The curiosity that had always driven him surged within him. Elliot had heard whispers of this manuscript before, stories of its undecipherable text and the mysteries surrounding it. A strange energy emanated from the book, as if it were calling to him. As his fingers brushed against the delicate pages, he felt a shiver run down his spine. This was no ordinary artifact. This was the key to a secret long buried, and Elliot was determined to uncover it. His heart raced with excitement, but also a sense of caution. The manuscript was bound in darkness, filled with riddles no one had solved for centuries. What truths lay hidden within its cryptic illustrations and unreadable script? Elliot didn't know, but one thing was certain: he was ready to find out, no matter where it led. Elliot pored over the manuscript for hours, captivated by its secrets. The more he studied it, the more convinced he became that this was no ordinary book. It was a puzzle, a code waiting to be cracked. Each symbol, each illustration seemed purposeful, yet defied logic. Was it an ancient language? Or perhaps a series of instructions from a time long forgotten? Elliot's mind raced with possibilities. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of discovering something momentous. Yet, despite his growing excitement, there was also a sense of foreboding that gnawed at him. The symbols seemed too complex, too deliberate. They weren't just random shapes, but pieces of a much larger picture, something that could alter the course of history. As Elliot stared at the page, he noticed something new. One symbol, a simple circle with intricate lines radiating from it, appeared to glow faintly. It was the first clear sign of a hidden message. Elliot leaned in closer, his heart pounding. Was this the breakthrough he had been waiting for? Elliot couldn't stop thinking about the strange symbol. It lingered in his mind, even as he left the library and made his way to a small cafe, where he had arranged to meet with a mysterious informant. The informant, a man named Victor, was known for his extensive knowledge of ancient texts and languages. Despite his reputation, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that Victor's interest in the manuscript was far more personal than he let on. When they met, Victor's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You've seen it, haven't you?" Victor asked, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. Elliot nodded cautiously. "I've uncovered something. Something important." Victor leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "You must understand, some knowledge is dangerous. The manuscript you're studying is not just a book, it is a key to something much greater and much darker. It has been hidden for a reason." Elliot, intrigued yet skeptical, couldn't help but ask, "What exactly is this key for?" Victor's face grew pale as he spoke. "A secret buried deep in time. A secret that could change everything." The words sent a chill down Elliot's spine, but his curiosity overpowered his hesitation. What had he just stepped into? The next day, Elliot sought out the help of Dr. Isabel Hart, a renowned academic in her 40s, who specialized in ancient languages. Although initially dismissive of the manuscript's significance, Isabel reluctantly agreed to take a look at it after seeing the detailed botanical illustrations. As she flipped through the fragile pages, her skepticism began to waver. The drawings were not just artistic, they appeared to be detailed, precise depictions of real plants, but from places that no known botanist had ever documented. "This isn't just a random collection of symbols," Isabel said, her voice filled with uncertainty. "It's a code, an encrypted language." Elliot's heart raced. "What do you mean by encrypted?" Isabel frowned, scanning a particularly detailed page. "These plants, they're not native to any known region. The symbols next to them seem to match patterns from ancient dialects I've studied, but they're incomplete. I'll need more time to analyze this, but something doesn't feel right." Elliot's excitement grew, but so did a creeping doubt. What had they uncovered, and why had it been hidden for so long? After hours of examining the manuscript, Isabel and Elliot made a breakthrough. Isabel had discovered that one of the symbols matched a phrase from an ancient text she had come across during her research. This symbol, a complex spiral, seemed to correspond to a long-lost civilization. "I knew it," Isabel murmured, tracing the spiral with her finger. "This is not just a manuscript, it's a map, of sorts. A map that's been encoded." Elliot leaned in closer, his excitement palpable. "A map to what?" Isabel hesitated, her brow furrowed, as she glanced at the cryptic illustrations. "I can't be sure, but it seems to indicate a location. But there's more. This symbol is the same as one found in a long-forgotten temple in the Andes." Elliot's mind raced. Could the manuscript be a map to a hidden site? A site that held the answers to questions no one had dared to ask for centuries? The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but the mystery was far from over. Every new clue only deepened the enigma. Elliot's search led him to a prestigious university, where he met Dr. Jonathan Crane, an enigmatic figure in his late 50s. Dr. Crane, known for his expertise in ancient manuscripts, seemed to know more than he was letting on. As Elliot shared his findings, Crane grew increasingly uneasy. "You've uncovered something dangerous, Elliot," he warned, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "The manuscript you're studying is not meant to be understood. It's a key to secrets buried deep, hidden for a reason." Elliot felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "What are you saying?" he pressed, his curiosity growing. Crane's gaze hardened. "Some knowledge should remain lost. Some truths are better left forgotten. You've touched something that many powerful people would do anything to protect." Elliot felt the weight of his discovery settle in. What had he unleashed, and who else was watching? As the days passed, Elliot grew more and more frustrated with his lack of progress. It was during this time that he encountered Maya, a fellow researcher in her late 20s, who offered to help him decode the manuscript. At first, she seemed like an ally, someone just as driven by the pursuit of truth. But as they spent more time together, Elliot began to notice strange inconsistencies in her behavior. She would often divert the conversation when it turned to certain aspects of the manuscript. One evening, after a long discussion, Elliot stumbled upon a clue hidden in one of the manuscript's margins, a symbol that he had never noticed before. When he showed it to Maya, she hesitated. "I didn't think you would find that," she said quietly. Elliot's suspicions grew, but he decided to press forward. "What does it mean, Maya?" he asked. She didn't answer, her gaze shifting uncomfortably. The truth, Elliot realized, might be closer than he thought. Elliot continued to study the manuscript, convinced that hidden within its pages were answers to questions no one had dared to ask. He began to notice something strange. The illustrations were not just random depictions of plants. They seemed to correspond to geographical locations, almost like a map. One evening, as Elliot pored over the drawings once again, he found a series of symbols that seemed to match certain locations on an old map of the world. His heart raced as he began to trace the paths the manuscript's illustrations followed. "This can't be a coincidence," he muttered, piecing together the locations. Could the manuscript be leading him to something? He was on the verge of a discovery that could change everything. But the more he delved into the manuscript's illustrations, the more he realized that the truth might be far darker than he had ever imagined. The next clue came from an unexpected source. While searching through historical records, Elliot uncovered a journal belonging to an explorer from the early 1900s, someone who had disappeared without a trace while investigating a lost civilization in the Andes. The journal described the explorer's encounters with strange symbols, similar to those in the manuscript. As Elliot read through the pages, he realized that the explorer's last entry mentioned a hidden temple, a place where the manuscript symbols might lead. But there was something else in the journal, something that struck Elliot to his core. The explorer had written about a curse, a force that seemed to guard the secrets the manuscript held. Was this the same force that had kept the manuscript hidden for so long? Elliot felt a chill run down his spine. The explorer's fate was unclear, but one thing was certain: He had uncovered something far more dangerous than he could have ever anticipated. As Elliot pressed forward, he began to realize that not everyone who appeared to be helping him had pure intentions. Maya, whom he had trusted, had begun to distance herself, her actions growing more secretive. One night, Elliot followed her after a meeting, convinced that she was hiding something. To his shock, he watched as Maya met with an unfamiliar figure in the shadows, a man whose face Elliot had seen before. The man was Dr. Jonathan Crane, the very same person who had warned him about the manuscript's dangers. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Maya was working for Crane, perhaps even against him. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. Crane, it seemed, had not been trying to protect the manuscript from harm. He had been trying to keep its secrets buried. The truth was more elusive than Elliot had ever imagined. Elliot's obsession with the manuscript grew, and so did his sense of dread. Late one night, as he examined a hidden layer of the manuscript, he uncovered something he wasn't prepared for. A reference to a long-forgotten ritual. The illustrations depicted an ancient temple hidden beneath the Andes, marked with symbols resembling those from the manuscript. His pulse quickened. This was no mere map. It was a guide. The manuscript was leading him to something dangerous, something others had long sought to bury. The more Elliot researched, the clearer it became. This wasn't just an academic mystery. It was a dark legacy, one that had left bodies in its wake. His mind raced with questions, but one truth stood out. He wasn't the only one searching for the answers. As Elliot pieced together the symbols, he began to see a larger pattern. He reached out to Victor, the informant, who had been silent for days. When they met, Victor's expression was grim. "I know what you've found," he said, his voice low and tense. "And I know who you're up against." Elliot's heart skipped a beat. Victor wasn't just a source of information. He was part of a much larger game. The shadowy figure following him, the mysterious betrayals, they all made sense now. Victor revealed that a clandestine organization, known only as the Order, had spent centuries safeguarding the manuscript's secrets. Elliot's discovery had not gone unnoticed, and they would stop at nothing to protect the manuscript's power. The game had changed. Elliot was no longer just seeking knowledge. He was now a target. Elliot's journey took him to the remote mountains of the Andes, where the map from the manuscript seemed to point. With Maya, who had now become an unwilling ally, they trekked through harsh terrain, the air thin and biting. The deeper they went, the more Elliot felt that they were being watched. They had barely reached the base of the temple when a figure emerged from the shadows. The Keeper of Secrets. Dr. Crane. "I warned you, Elliot," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "This path leads to nothing but ruin. You should have stayed away." The once respected academic was now fully revealed as the force behind the organization, trying to stop Elliot's search. A cold chill settled over Elliot. It was no longer just about the manuscript. It was about survival. Elliot and Maya made their way inside the temple, where the manuscript's clues pointed to an ancient altar. As they approached the altar, Maya's demeanor shifted. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice strained. Before Elliot could react, she moved swiftly, pulling a hidden weapon from her coat and pointing it at him. "I never meant to be your ally," Maya said, her eyes cold. "I was sent to stop you." The shock hit Elliot like a blow. Maya wasn't just a companion. She had been playing him from the start, a part of Dr. Crane's network. As Maya advanced, Elliot scrambled to find a way out, but the temple's entrance had been sealed. The trap had been set. Elliot was now alone, facing betrayal at the hands of someone he had trusted. As Maya advanced, Elliot ducked behind the altar, his mind racing. He needed to survive, to learn the truth. In a desperate move, he reached for the manuscript, flipping through the pages to the last section. It was then that he saw it. Hidden beneath a layer of ink, a new symbol appeared, glowing faintly. This was it, the final key. The manuscript, it seemed, had been guiding him all along, and now it was showing him the truth. With a surge of adrenaline, Elliot deciphered the final message. A warning. The power hidden in the temple was beyond anything he could control. But it wasn't just knowledge, It was a force, a weapon capable of changing the world. Maya's betrayal, Dr. Crane's manipulation, all of it made sense now. The manuscript was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Elliot, still reeling from Maya's betrayal, began to understand the magnitude of the secret he had uncovered. The glowing symbol in the manuscript had led him to an ancient chamber beneath the temple, where a hidden relic awaited. It was an artifact of unimaginable power, a key to unlocking the full potential of the manuscript's teachings. The walls were adorned with strange cryptic markings, and in the center of the room stood an altar, atop which lay a relic, an intricately carved stone, pulsing with faint light. As Elliot approached, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The manuscript's true purpose was not simply to reveal knowledge. It was to unlock a force, a weapon. The more Elliot studied the relic, the clearer it became that it wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about controlling a power that could reshape the world. He knew then that he had no choice but to act. Time was running out, and the forces behind the manuscript were closing in. Just as Elliot reached for the relic, the distant sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber. He turned quickly, only to find Dr. Crane emerging from the shadows, his face unreadable. "I warned you, Elliot," Crane said, his voice cold and calculated. "This power is not meant to be wielded by anyone. You think you can control it? You're wrong." Elliot stood frozen, the manuscript trembling in his hand. "You've been protecting it for years," Elliot replied, his voice shaky but determined. "All of this? Why? What's the truth behind the manuscript?" Crane's expression softened, but only briefly. The manuscript was never meant for discovery. It is a tool to control the course of human history. If you release this power, you will not only lose control, but the consequences will be irreversible. Crane took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Elliot." The air between them was thick with hostility, but Elliot's resolve hardened. He wasn't backing down now. Elliot's gaze lingered on the relic, its faint glow beckoning him. Every instinct told him to step back, to leave before the power it offered consumed him. But the manuscript had promised answers he could no longer resist. As he stood at the precipice of revelation, he felt a whisper in the back of his mind. It was the relic speaking to him, urging him to take it. It promised the knowledge of the ancients, the understanding of a forgotten world, and the power to shape the future. But at what cost? The air seemed to hum with the relic's energy, vibrating through his entire body. "This isn't what I wanted," Elliot whispered, his fingers brushing the surface of the stone. But deep down, he knew he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when everything he had worked for was within his grasp. Without warning, the ground beneath Elliot's feet trembled, and the chamber around him seemed to come alive. The symbols on the walls glowed with an intense light, and the relic on the altar pulsed more fiercely. "What have you done?" Crane's voice echoed through the chamber, but it was too late. The relic was now awake. The ancient power it contained surged through Elliot, flooding his mind with visions of the past and the future. He saw the civilizations that had once wielded this power, and the devastation they had wrought. A part of him recoiled, but the other part, the part that had been searching for truth, for answers, was consumed by it. "This is the price," Elliot murmured, as the power continued to overwhelm him. His body trembled as the visions intensified, and he could feel the weight of the knowledge pressing down on him. The power was his, but it was also his curse. The visions that flooded Elliot's mind began to slow, but the damage had already been done. He collapsed to his knees, the manuscript slipping from his hand. His body was drained, as though the power had consumed him entirely. Crane stepped forward, his face now one of regret. "I warned you," he said, his voice soft but filled with a deep sorrow. "No one was meant to bear that burden." Elliot's chest heaved as he struggled to breathe. The knowledge was now within him, but it had come at a price. He had unlocked the power, but it had overwhelmed his mind. I didn't know," Elliot whispered, his voice barely audible. Crane knelt beside him, a shadow of pity in his eyes. "None of us ever truly know the cost." Elliot's vision blurred as the weight of the truth crushed him. He had reached for the forbidden, and now there was no going back. Elliot sat, his mind a whirlwind of fractured thoughts. The ancient power he had unlocked was now beyond his control, and he could feel the weight of it pressing against him. The relic's influence lingered, shifting his thoughts, clouding his judgment. As he tried to focus, the walls around him began to shimmer with the vivid images of past civilizations, the ones that had once controlled this power. Dr. Crane stood beside him, watching the visions unfold. "This is the truth," Crane said solemnly. "The manuscript was created to guard a force, one that should never be unleashed." Elliot's hands trembled as he gripped the manuscript tightly. "Why didn't you stop me?" he whispered. Crane's expression faltered. "I couldn't. No one can stop it once the knowledge is awakened. We're all bound to it now." The room seemed to grow colder as Elliot's realization sank in. The manuscript was more than just a source of knowledge. It was a conduit to something far darker, something that could bend the fabric of reality itself. As the tension in the chamber thickened, Maya's voice pierced the silence. "You didn't think I'd let you finish this, did you?" Elliot turned to see her standing in the doorway, her expression a mixture of anger and regret. "Maya," Elliot said, his voice hoarse, "why are you here, after everything?" Maya stepped forward, her eyes burning with conviction. "I had to stop you, Elliot. I was sent to guide you, to make sure you didn't unlock the power you're holding. You're not ready for it." Elliot's heart raced as she pulled a small device from her coat. "This will undo everything," she said, pressing a button. The relic on the altar began to pulse violently, its energy spiraling out of control. "Maya, no!" Elliot shouted, realizing too late that the battle for control was far from over. She had always been one step ahead. The chamber trembled as the relic's energy surged uncontrollably. Elliot scrambled to his feet, the manuscript still clutched tightly in his hands. "You have no idea what you've done," Elliot shouted, his voice filled with panic. The relic pulsed with an eerie light, casting long shadows against the stone walls. Maya's expression softened for a brief moment, but then her face hardened. "I did what I had to do," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. Elliot felt the power growing inside him, the ancient knowledge rushing through his veins. The relic had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. His body felt as if it were being pulled apart, each vision clearer than the last. He saw the civilizations that had tried to control the relic, and their ultimate downfall. "This power," Elliot gasped. "It's too much." The room around him seemed to warp, the very fabric of reality bending and shifting as the ancient power began to take form. Elliot collapsed to his knees, the power overwhelming him. His mind was no longer his own, filled with endless visions of destruction and chaos. He could see the aftermath of civilizations, their fall brought about by the very power he had unleashed. I can't control it," Elliot gasped, his voice barely audible. Maya stepped forward, her expression full of regret. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "But you have to understand, the power was never meant for us." Dr. Crane, standing in the shadows, spoke with a grim tone. "You were warned, Elliot. Now you must live with the consequences." The temple seemed to be collapsing around them, the walls shaking as the very earth beneath their feet cracked open. The relic's energy continued to spiral, threatening to consume everything in its wake. Elliot looked up, his eyes filled with despair. "It's too late. We've doomed ourselves." In the final moments, Elliot knew that the only way to stop the destruction was to make the ultimate sacrifice. He looked at Maya, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "If I end this, if I destroy the relic, I'll never be the same. I won't be able to control the power anymore." Maya nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I know, but it's the only way to save us all." Elliot turned to face Dr. Crane, who was watching silently. "You always knew this day would come, didn't you?" Elliot asked. Crane's expression was unreadable. "We all have our role to play," he replied softly. The relic's energy surged again, but this time, Elliot made his decision. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, reaching for the relic one last time. As his fingers brushed the stone, the world around him went dark. The world seemed to tremble around Elliot as he stood before the relic, the last piece of the puzzle. He had made his decision to destroy the relic and stop the power it held, but the cost would be high. Maya, standing beside him, looked at him with a mix of fear and relief. "If you do this," she said softly, "there's no turning back." Elliot nodded, his face pale but resolute. "I know," he replied, his voice steady. "But if I don't, everything we fought for will be lost." Dr. Crane's voice echoed from the shadows. "Destroying the relic will destroy everything. You'll be nothing more than a shell of yourself." Elliot turned toward him. "I'd rather live as a shell than let this power consume the world." As he took the first step toward the relic, the weight of his decision pressed down on him. He knew there was no escape from the consequences, but he had no choice. The world was teetering on the edge of destruction, and the only way to save it was to let go of the very thing that had started it all. With a sudden sharp noise, the temple shook again, this time with greater force. Elliot felt the tremor beneath his feet, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Maya grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "It's too dangerous," she cried. "You can't do this." Elliot turned toward her, his eyes locked onto the relic. "I have to, Maya," he said firmly. "If we don't, everything we know, everything we fought for will be wiped away." As the energy in the room intensified, the walls began to crack, and the ground beneath them started to give way. Elliot could feel the power surging through him, almost as if the relic itself was fighting back. Dr. Crane stepped forward, a look of desperation on his face. "Stop," he shouted. "You have no idea what you're about to unleash." But Elliot, now fully committed, stepped toward the relic once more, ready to destroy it and the dangerous force it held. Elliot reached out, his hand trembling as he hovered just above the relic. The energy in the room seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a force that fought against him. As his fingers brushed the surface of the stone, the entire temple erupted in blinding light. Elliot could feel the power surge through him. Visions of the past, of civilizations long gone, flashed before his eyes. He could see the destruction that had been caused by those who had come before him, and the inevitable destruction that would follow if the relic was allowed to exist. The pain in his chest intensified, but he forced himself to hold on. "I can't let this happen again," he thought. With a final push, Elliot pressed his hand onto the relic, and the energy exploded in a shockwave, sending him sprawling to the floor. The relic cracked, its energy beginning to dissipate. As the light faded, the temple fell silent. Elliot lay on the cold stone floor, his body bruised and weakened. The relic had been destroyed, but the cost had been great. Maya rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she checked for signs of life. "Elliot, can you hear me?" she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked at her, his voice barely audible. "It's over, Maya," he said with a weak smile. "It's finally over." The weight of what had just transpired seemed to settle over them both. Dr. Crane, standing in the background, seemed to collapse under the pressure of the moment. "You've done it," he muttered. "But at what cost?" The ground beneath them continued to shake as the temple crumbled around them. They had destroyed the power, but the world they knew was forever changed. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, the dust from the collapsed temple settled. Elliot and Maya stood outside, the world around them quieter than it had been in years. They had won, but at great cost. "We've saved the world," Maya said, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. Elliot looked at her, his eyes tired but resolute. "No," he replied. "We've just given it a chance to heal." The power of the manuscript was gone, but the consequences of what had happened would echo through history. "What now?" Maya asked. Elliot's gaze turned to the horizon, where the sun was rising. "Now we rebuild," he said. "And we make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Elliot and Maya walked away from the ruins of the temple, the weight of their actions still heavy on their shoulders. The world had changed, and they had played a part in that. "Do you think we'll ever be free of this?" Maya asked softly. Elliot glanced at her, his expression weary. "I hope so," he replied. But in his heart he knew that the scars of the past would never truly fade. Their journey had altered the course of history, and while they had stopped the immediate threat, they were bound to the legacy of what had happened. A new world awaited, but it came with the burden of knowing that the manuscript's power could rise again. The path forward wasn't clear, but they would walk it together. Maya paused for a moment, her gaze lingering on the horizon. "What if we didn't destroy everything? What if we were wrong?" she asked quietly. Elliot stopped beside her, his thoughts racing. The power was too dangerous. "We did the right thing," he said, but doubt crept into his voice. The knowledge they had uncovered could not be erased, not truly. Even though they had destroyed the manuscript, the lessons from their journey would remain with them forever. Maya looked at him, her eyes filled with a silent understanding. "And what about us, Elliot?" she asked softly. He looked back at her, his expression conflicted. "We'll find a way," he replied, though both knew it would never be easy. The days after their escape were filled with uncertainty. Elliot tried to resume his life, but the weight of what they had done lingered. Maya, too, found herself haunted by the remnants of their journey. They had saved the world, yet they both felt lost. "Can we ever go back?" Maya asked as they sat in a small cafe, the bustle of the city around them feeling distant and foreign. Elliot stirred his coffee absently, lost in thought. "I don't know," he replied. "I think we've both changed." Maya nodded, her eyes meeting his. "For better or worse, we've seen things that can never be unseen." And for the first time, Elliot realized that they would never truly go back to who they were before. They had to live with the echoes of their choices, moving forward into the uncertain future. Elliot sat alone by the window, staring out at the city. He could still feel the weight of the relic's power in his mind, the remnants of its energy lingering within him. Maya joined him, sitting quietly beside him. Neither spoke for a long time, but the silence between them was comfortable now. It was as if they had finally found a place of peace. "We made the right choice," Maya said softly, breaking the silence. Elliot didn't answer immediately. Instead, he nodded, accepting the truth of her words. They had made the right choice, but it had come at a cost. The world would move on, but their journey, their sacrifices, would never be forgotten. It would remain with them, part of who they were now. The final piece of their journey was understanding that the world had moved on. The knowledge from the manuscript was gone, but the changes it had wrought would remain. "We've given the world a chance," Elliot said quietly. Maya looked at him, a soft smile on her lips. "And now, it's up to them," she replied. The sun had set, casting the sky in hues of orange and pink. As the city around them settled into the quiet of night, they both knew that their path had ended, but the world's had just begun. It was no longer about the manuscript or the relic. It was about the future they had helped shape, and the responsibility that came with it. For better or worse, the past was behind them, and the future was theirs to face.